Okay, so in this short exercise, we're going to just look at, or we're working towards doing a full eaves detail drawing like this. And for the most part, a lot of that is, with practice, is fairly straightforward and manageable. One area that's new and one area that causes problems an awful lot is the slates along here. When drawing slates, we have 3 layers of slates towards the front, and then we have a constant overlap all the way up through the roof. And because of the fact that the slates are so thin, they're only 1 line thickness, because of the fact that there's an overlap, and because of the fact that there's actually 3 layers of slates over the front of the roof, it causes an awful lot of confusion. It can cause frustration, and it can be quite messy as well when not done correctly. It also comes at a stage where you're at least half or more of the way through this drawing, and that's where confusion can occur as well, and it can kind of ruin your drawing. So rather than starting this one from scratch, I find it's always a great idea to just do a practice run on drawing slates. So in this worksheet here, I have a drawing at a scale of 1:5. So this is actually bigger, twice as big than what we're used to at this stage. But the reason I've done this worksheet at 1:5 is just so that it's easier to get a good look at your slates and try and draw those in when it's bigger rather than smaller. So I'll just read the question there and we'll go from there. So a slated roof, eaves detail. In the detail below, draw the correct position of each course of slates. So basically, I have the full eaves detail drawn in. I've got the cavity wall, I've got the insulation, the wall plate, the joist, the rafter, the eaves ventilator, the fascia, the soffit, the tilting fillet, and even the battens. The battens are all in position as well. We have got to learn to draw those in the correct place, but not right now. At the moment, our focus is on getting the slates done. As I said, most of our work at this stage and most of our work going forward will be scale 1:10. I have doubled the size of this just so that it's a bit easier to see and a bit easier to understand. Okay, a good when it comes to slates as well, I suppose, like a lot of things, there's room for variation. Slates can come in different sizes, so it's better for us just to get used to one size of a slate. Slates can usually be 600mm long or 700mm long. I just rather prefer, or I'm more used to just drawing 600mm slates, and that's what we're going to go with. So each slate that we draw in will be 600mm in size. These here are battens which have been nailed to each of the rafters. The battens are evenly spaced up along the roof, except down at the bottom there's an extra batten put in place here. So what really happens down in this area is we have roughly 1/3 of a slate, roughly a 1/2 a slate overlapping that, and then your first full slate gets nailed to here. And then you've got an overlap here of 50mm, and you end up with 3 slates on top of each other, and just to add to the waterproofing of the roof itself. And as you work your way back up this way, you've got just an overlap of slates on top of each other, full slates all the way back up. So roughly 1/3 of a slate, roughly 1/2 a slate, and then your first full slate, and it's full slates all the way up. Alright, when it comes to drawing slates, as I said, they're very thin, at best just a thick line. The danger there is that you want to make sure that it doesn't become just a big smudge here. A thick line to draw your slate into position there. Each slate needs to come from the center point of each batten. So again, you just estimate yourself where the center of each batten is and go from there. So before we start drawing that, a little bit on the equipment being used. A T-square. We have our 60-30 set square. We have our 45-degree set square, 2 H pencil, a H pencil for your dark work. I'm just going to use a HB for the sake of the video. Your pens, red, black, green, blue, and your rubber. Alright, that's all the equipment we need as usual. Important to have all that in good order and well prepared. Now, a good place to look at measurements for slates as well is on page 81 of your Construction Studies Revision Journal. And these are good measurements to work off of. So I'll just quickly talk you through this. You can see there needs to be a 50mm overlap. So from the fascia, I have another zoom in there. So from the fascia, there needs to be a 50mm overhang there, so to help guide the rainwater away. Your first slate, a good size to go with, is 250. Your second slate here at 350, and then from there you can start drawing your full 600mm slates. Alright, so from the center there is your first full slate. So a 250mm slate, a 350mm slate, and then a full 600mm slate, overhanging roughly 50mm out from there. So start this off. Remember, this is a scale of 1:5, so our measurements are twice as big. So I need to have an overhang of 50mm here. When I scale that down at 1:5, that will work out at 10. So if I've correctly placed on this, I'll go from the center here and I will draw 250mm of a slate, just out like that. Again, when you scale down 250mm at 1:5, that works out at 50mm. So from the center of that batten, I've basically drawn a thick line straight out past there, 250mm long. When that's scaled down, it's 50mm. So it's a nice thick line just resting on the fascia there. The next one that I want to draw is 350mm long. When I scale that down, that's going to be 70mm. So again, I'm going to put 70 right on the center, and I'm going to have this on top of that. Now, in reality, these slates are resting on top of each other. Just for the sake of the neatness and the sake of the drawing, it's good to see the slightest gap between those. So if you have to lift that up a small bit or just make it work so that you've got those resting slightly on top of each other, that's fine. The final slate then is 600mm. So a full slate is 600mm. So when I scale down 600mm by 5, that will work out at 120mm. So I'm going to go to this batten here. I'm going to set 120mm there, and I'm going to draw again a thick line. Let's go over it a few times. This takes a bit of practice, a bit of getting used to. Often can go wrong. And there is my next slate. So you can see the slightest gap between those just to decipher. So a 250mm slate, roughly a third. A 350mm slate, roughly half, and a 600mm slate there. And from there on, every other batten, all the way up, we just do 600mm slates, and you'll get your overlap all the time. Alright, so I'm going to go to the next batten, and I'm going to go 600mm, when scaled down as 120, and I'm going to draw in that line. Alright, so your full slate there, you've got a full overlap of slates here, and even the overlap slightly there at the end as well. I'll go on and just do one more slate to show that. Center of this batten, 120mm. And that's drawn into place there. Again, you can see there's a bit of a gap there on those. Even there, if you look at it, that slate's slightly sitting off the batten, that'll be fine as long as it works. And that's just a little bit of a practice run on how to do slates. The next worksheet we're going to do a little bit more on how to position the battens, and then do slates at a scale of 1:10.